welcome back. So, we were talking about the search and unemployment model, and under this model we discussed about the one-sided model, and in one-sided model we were talking about the supply side of the labor market. Now, when I talk about supply side of the labor market, then we have to think about in what context the labor can be participating in the labor market. So, we had derived some ideas about how we can measure the participation of labor in the labor force market, and if the labor is participating, then what are the factors that determine the participation of the labor force. One basic aspect that we always look at, that what are the safety nets of the labor. So, one we discuss about is that the government introduces the unemployment insurance benefit, and this unemployment insurance benefit provides an opportunity to the labor and it also gives an opportunity to the labor to bargain with the firm, so that at least there will be some kind of threshold for the labor to ask for a better wage rate or better wage from the firm. So, we analyze these aspects. We were talking about the two-sided part. In two-sided part, we had introduced both. One is the firm and one is the labor. And we wanted to see that how, when we are seeing from the demand side and supply side. So, labor is also looking for work, firm is also posting the vacancies. So, if we are seeing from both dimensions, then how the interaction between firm and the consumer or labor can play an important role in determining the overall unemployment in the economy. So, we will be getting back and deriving those macro indicators that we had mentioned. So, unemployment rate, the participation rate, the vacancy rate, the beverage curve. So, all these concepts will again be coming back. But at this moment, let us get back to what we were talking about, and then we will move to the and finally, we will conclude this particular topic. So, the reference remains same, the Williamson and the Sanjay Kechug, this the macroeconomics book and the modern macroeconomics. So, these two references are the sole. And then we were discussing about the two period, and under that we had discussed that. So, let us get back to. So, here what we are saying, that here we are having the end consumers who are looking for jobs. So, not inside the house or not out of the labor market, they are actually participating in the labor market and they are looking for opportunities. So, we are talking about end consumers. Then we are looking at the firms which are operating in the economy and they are looking for individuals. So, they are posting regularly the vacancies, and these vacancies are important for deriving the unemployment scenarios. So, if you have more vacancies coming from the firms and if the individuals are having more opportunities, then in the last class we had derived a term called labor market tightness, right. So, how with respect to the how it is the ratio of number of firms looking for the employment opportunities or number of firms posting vacancies and number of individuals looking for opportunities. So, it is the ratio of that. We have also used for the reciprocal, but labor market tightness basically decides about this. So, if you have more of A's, individuals are having more opportunities to look for. So, as a result you find that the unemployment reduces. But here we are talking only about those firms which are posting the vacancies. So, these things we had derived already. We had also derived about the N. If N is the number of individuals looking for opportunity and Q is the number of consumers who are looking for work, then we are talking about N minus Q, not the N entire. So, we are talking about only those individuals who have interest in working and they are looking for opportunity. The payoff that we had decided about the labor supply. So, it shows this, that you have the expected payoff searching for work. So, if it is going up, then it is of course bound to have the positive relationship. So, this we have shown, but this is the labor supply labor supply curve of the representative labor or the consumer that he or she is looking here. It was interesting that we introduced for the first time the firm in our model, and in firm we mentioned about that a firm will be posting vacancies, which means that this firm is looking for more I would say number of people to be hired. So, But one aspect that we touched upon in the last session also was the cost of posting vacancies, that how this particular in the last class I had also mentioned about how the companies hire consultancy firms and the recruitment agencies to hire some amount of labor. And A is, we are denoting at A number of firms which are actively looking for individuals. So this is how we are mentioning about. Then we introduce, so we have already introduced the labor, we introduced the firm. Now we will be seeing how these two are interacting with each other. So that we delete with the matching function. So here you have to note it down that a successful match in the model is between one worker and one firm, which means that an individual is looking for job and a firm is looking for individual. So both are matching with each other. M is equal to aggregate number of matches, E is equal to matching efficiency, and here we have the matching function. So matching function that we are mentioning, M is equal to EM QA. So this is what we are mentioning about. So E represents the efficiency, so that we normally say if you are having the Cobb-Douglas production function, so the A parameter that we have or A constant that we use, that will represent the productivity. In the same way, E also represents the efficiency of Q and A. So Q represents the number of individuals looking for job, A represents the number of firms looking for individuals. So here it decides about, and it has certain characteristics that I have already mentioned. So it mentions about constant returns to scale, positive marginal products, diminishing marginal products. So these are all associated, and I think these are the very common terms. So linearly specified, you can say, and even if you have increment in the function by 1, then it also leads to the matching increase by 1. So this is what, so if one firm is increasing, one individual is increasing, it is also leading to increase by the same amount in M. So this is what it mentions about. So it can be interpreted in that way, and that if you have constant increase, then we call it as the constant return to a scale. So this is what we mentioned. Positive marginal product in the sense that further additions is having the positive effect. See, so output also will increase, right? If I are hiring one more person, then the output is going to increase, but it will also have the diminishing scenario. But after some point of time, you cannot go for infinite hiring, because you have to look for productivity also. So from the productivity point of view, we are assuming that it is about the diminishing marginal products. Now we will be talking about now the supply side of the labor market, which is that we are now going to optimize. So we are now looking at the optimization by consumers, that how consumers are optimizing. Now here you have to note it down that each consumer chooses between home production and searching for work. Home production in the sense that you are not going to look for job, you are sitting at home doing some work that you enjoy. So maybe the leisure that we have discussed in one period model, that will come into play here. So you can say that those activities which are not paying you any or which are not having immediate economic benefits, so we are mentioning about those. So here, and searching for work means that if you work for a certain number of hours with fixed duration, then you are going to get some reward or the wage. So we are not counting for non-wage activities, we are counting with those activities which are linked with the wage. So if you work for certain number of hours, you are supposed to get. Now if the consumer chooses to search for work, then he or she finds a match with a firm and with certain probabilities that how much we have. So if the consumer is looking for work, then there are chances that he may be employed, or there are chances that he may not be employed. So we are mentioning about that. So here we have the probability of matching, which means that a chance that a consumer skill set or the required skill by of the firm matches with a particular consumer. So here it is PC. Again we are mentioning M upon Q. So M is nothing but EMQA, it is Q, and here it is EM. So Q and Q gets cancelled, here we have one A upon Q, so EM 1J. So this is how we are going to talk about. So here the EM 1J in the last class, in the last session also I mentioned about, right. So if the consumer searches for work, he or she will receive the wage rate. If the consumer searches and it's not matched, then he or she will have to depend upon the unemployment insurance benefits, which is B. So, which means that if the individual is able to match with the required skills of the firm, he gets employment, he gets the wage rate. If he is not able to match, and if matching does not take place, then he has to satisfy with the unemployment insurance benefits. So, that is the underlying idea. So, this also we had covered. Then we mentioned about the consumer probability of being unemployed. If a consumer chooses to search for work is then, so 1 minus PC is equal to 1 minus EM1J. So, for the consumer who is indifferent, so if the consumer is indifferent, which means that if the consumer matches with the requirement of the firm, if there is skill match between the firm's requirement and the individual, so we have PC, which is M upon Q. If it is not matching, then it is 1 minus PC. So, this we are mentioning about. So, 1 minus PC is equal to 1 minus EM1J. For the consumer who is indifferent, so now will be, so here it is, if he is matched, then it is PC multiplied by the wage rate, plus if he is not matched, then he has to satisfy with the unemployment insurance benefit. How we can mention it? So, here we can simply derive. So, if you go for writing it further just for the PC, then ultimately what we have is B plus EM1J W minus B. So, this is how we get it here. So, EM upon Q that you can mention. So, here we have EM1J, this we can introduce it here, and then finally, we can arrive at this figure. Now, here you have to notice the W minus B. What is W minus B? W minus B is the difference between how much the firm is offering the wage rate and how much is the unemployment insurance benefit. So, wider is the gap between these two, there are high chances that labor will be willing to supply his or her labor. But from firm side, we are not sure what will happen to the firm side, because firm may not like to hire, because when the wage rate is high, the firm may have to incur the extra cost. So, those things we will be dealing later. One thing that I mentioned, that J, the labor market tightness, it is the ratio of A upon Q, number of actively looking firms and number of people who are searching for job. If A increases, there are high chances that the labor market tightness is going to be higher. If A decreases, the labor market tightness is going to be lower. So, this is how we interpret this. Now, once I mentioned about, so this is the supply side. So, expected payoff that the labor is willing to supply this much, right. So, this is what we mentioned with the given the difference between W minus B that the labor expects, the matching function, and the unemployment benefit, and this is the labor force. So, if you are going to increase this, there will be increase in the labor force, because more people will be interested, because W minus B is going to be higher. So, this is what we are mentioning about. Demand side of the labor market. So, demand side of the labor market, when the firm enters in the market, it bears the cost K to post a vacancy, which means that, as I told, that firm is hiring a consultancy firm, and this particular firm is looking for this particular firm helping the firms to recruit. So, which means that if firms are posting vacancies, it goes to some consultancy firms. Firms charge to the posting firms, and then firm settles or pays the amount. So, there is a cost involved in hiring. The probability that a firm with a vacancy finds a worker to fill the job is PF is equal to EM QA upon A. So, here we have PF, here we have the elasticity. So, once I mentioned about EM, so which means that it is M upon A. Here if I solve, so you can see that this is just the reciprocal of this. So, J we have written A upon Q. What we are mentioning, that here it is just the reciprocal of A upon Q. So, here it becomes EM Q upon A and A gets cancelled. So, here it is 1, which means that EM 1 upon J 1 that we are mentioning about. When matched, a worker and firm produce Z. So, the payoff to the firm is profit Z minus W. So, this is what we are mentioning, that if the firm is producing G amount of output, right. This is the output when firm is hiring a worker. So, if worker and a firm produces amount G, then the payoff of the profit will be what? How much you are producing, how much is your output produced by hiring the labor, and how much you are paying to the labor. So, Z minus W represents that. Now, expected net payoff for a firm posting a vacancy is 0 in equilibrium. How it is 0? So, firm will enter the labor market, it will post the vacancies until the expected net payoff doing so is 0. So, here it is P f Z minus W minus K is equal to 0. This is what we are mentioning, that if when the firm is entering into the market, so we assume that whatever the recruitment or likelihood of recruitment that the firm is having, and how whatever is the profit that firm makes, it is equivalent to the cost. So, P f Z minus W is equal to K, and this is what the equilibrium mentions about. In equilibrium, K must be equal to expected payoff. So, this is what we have for the firm for posting the vacancy. So, here if I am writing P f, so this can be written as E m 1 upon J 1, and this side we can bring this K this side, and then we have in denominator Z minus W coming. So, if I am writing E m 1 upon J 1, so it is K upon Z minus W. So, this is what we mentioned, that in equilibrium whatever the firm is having profit. So, the cost of posting vacancies relative to the I would say profit, if it is lower, then the firm is going to post more vacancies, otherwise not, which means that if Z minus W is higher, firm will not mind posting vacancy, because even if K is increasing, but the rate of increase in profit is much higher than K, then firm does not bother about. But if it is lower, then the firm will not post vacancy, which means that labor market tightness will have some impact of this. So, this is what we are going to examine. This is what we see, K upon Z minus W, Z minus W you can say. Here is the J 1. As you see increase in K, so if K increases, you can see that the labor market tightness decreases, and this leads to more unemployment, which means the less of posting of vacancies. And once you have the less posting of vacancies, the matching will be very difficult, and this will further reduce the labor market tightness, and as a result the outcome will be at macro level that your unemployment will increase. So, let us get back to, I think we had sufficient background about this in the last session. So, we will be now going forward. Now, the idea is that once I am mentioning about the expected net payoff, which is here, now we have also derived the demand side of the labor market. Now, we are seeing that how we can bring to an equilibrium of firm, or how we can drive the equilibrium between firm and the labor, because both are participating. The objective of the labor is to maximize the wage rate, the objective of the firm is to maximize the profit. So, how much bargaining is possible between firm and the labor, this we try to understand with the alternative strategies that these two individuals have under the Nash bargaining problem. So, the Nash bargaining solution, the idea behind this is that if you have two agents strike, if they strike a bargain, then it depends upon on what each person faces as an alternative. If the two person cannot agree, and on the relative bargaining. So, this is the underlying idea. It depends upon the relative bargaining power of the two people, how these two individuals in our setup, you can say these two agents, one is the firm, one is the labor, how these two agents are bargaining with each other, and at the end how much is the gain for both. So, let us first derive that what is the total surplus, how much is from the firm side and how much is from the labor side. Let us work out with the labor first. So, here it is the labor. So, worker surplus is equal to nothing but W minus B. So, here it is wage minus unemployment insurance benefit. Then here you have the firm surplus is equal to Z minus W. It is so once I mention about the firm surplus. So, here as I mentioned that how much the labor helps produce the output and how much firm pays to the labor. So, that is the profit for the firm. Worker surplus is nothing but W minus B. B is nothing but the unemployment insurance benefit we have already assumed. And then we have the total surplus. What is total surplus? Total surplus is nothing but Z minus B is equal to W minus B plus Z minus W. So, once we go for, so once I substitute for this, then we have the, we can cancel W and W. So, finally, we have Z minus B. So, this is what we get. Now, the total surplus that we have Z minus B. So, this is what we mentioned that for the firm the surplus is W minus B plus we have the surplus from the firm. So, it is Z minus W, W gets cancelled, Z minus B becomes the total surplus. Now, let us talk about in total surplus what is the share of the labor and what is the share of the firm. So, here mention about A is equal to worker share in total surplus. So, this is the bargaining power they have. So, if I go for the substitution, so how much I have? So, if W minus B, so this is the worker surplus is equal to A is the share in the, I would say, so Z minus B that I have mentioned here in total surplus. So, this is the total surplus we have. So, this is the labor share. So, labor shares can be written as W minus B. Here is the worker surplus is equal to the A, the fraction in total share surplus. So, Z minus B is this. We can go for solving W. So, W is equal to what is? It is A Z plus 1 minus A. So, once I have this and then we can bring this B this side. So, it becomes 1 minus A B, which means that A is linked with the profit or the, I would say, output produced by the firms, and 1 minus A goes to the unemployment insurance benefit. So, both are counted here. Now, once we have these two equations, so two equations determining Q and J from supply side, demand side and Nash bargaining can be written. So, we can substitute for W in 8th equation. So, this is what we have in 4 and 7. So, we can substitute here also we can substitute here. So, this is what 4. So, this is what we are trying to bring there. If I substitute W here, right. So, finally, what we get? We get EM 1 upon Z 1 is equal to K upon 1 minus A Z minus B. So, this is what we have the total surplus. So, 1 minus A which was the surplus attached with the B amount, this is what we had, and finally, we are getting that we arrive at this equilibrium what is the K upon 1 minus A Z minus B. So, Z minus B total surplus, as long as K is not increasing it will not bother so much. If K is increasing it will bother much to the firm for posting a vacancy. So, this is the underlying idea. We will also have the further understanding of this. Suppose we have this particular line and we can see that the labor market tightness that we have decided, we mentioned about labor market tightness is G, the corresponding labor force participation is Q, this is what. So, we will have the comparative statistics also, that what happens if K increases, what happens if B increases, because now we have explicit understanding that B is also playing a role, how much we have the product produced, which means that productivity will matter now. So, we will also see that what will happen if there is a productivity increase and if we are going to see increase in K. So, that matters now. Now, as we have already mentioned about these two things, now we have to go back and derive the macroeconomic variables. Which all were the macroeconomic variables? The very first variable was the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate is what? This is what we mentioned about. Here it is nothing but Q 1 minus PC. So, once we have a Q 1 minus PC, so here it becomes 1 minus EM 1J. So, this is what we have derived. So, your unemployment rate is nothing but 1 minus how much you have the efficiency of matching. So, this is what it becomes. Vacancy rate A into 1 minus PF. So, this also becomes 1 minus EM 1 upon J. This is more related with the firm. So, that is why it is the reciprocal term is coming here, and this is upon A upon Q, which means that the number of vacancies will matter a lot, that how many firms are participating, how many firms are posting, and then the aggregate amount, aggregate output in the economy will depend upon this, that how much we have the M is nothing but EM1J, and here we have so M is nothing but Q, how many people are looking for matching and how many matching is taking place. So, here we have 1J, the E is the efficiency, and G is the output that the firm is producing by hiring the labor. So, this is the aggregate output, this is the vacancy rate, and this is the unemployment rate. Now, we will be working with the comparative statistics. So, increase in the UI benefit B, increase in productivity G, decrease in matching efficiency E. So, this is how it works. It means that once we have the increase in unemployment benefit, so what we see is that we have the, so here this is the first equilibrium that we have. So, this is what we have minus B1 K 1 upon A Z minus B1. So, this is the original equilibrium. We see that once we have the unemployment insurance increasing, then this leads to leftward shift of the labor supply curve, and as a result you will find that the unemployment will increase, because this is it is decrease in the labor supply. Why? Because once we have the unemployment benefit increasing, more number of people will be asking for higher job, higher wages, and that will be difficult for the firm to meet. So, this is what we have. Increasing the wage rate as the alternative to working becomes more tempting for searching consumers. So, this is what. So, as a result labor market tightness J falls, for consumers searching for work becomes more attractive, and they will be lacking, they will not be accepting, which means that your unemployment will rise and vacancy will fall. So, this will have impact on your Beveridge curve. So, this is what we trying to understand. So, second is the increase in productivity. What happens if the firm is hiring a labor and this labor helps produce a more output, which means the increase in Z. So, once I have the increase in Z, so this will help a lot. So, Z minus B, this is what we are mentioning about. So, if the total surplus is increasing, then this will have the positive effect. So, this is what we have. So, this is 1. We see that once we have the output, so this is 1, this is the labor market tightness. Once we have the increase in productivity, then firm does not mind posting more vacancies, because now the cost for posting vacancy may also be lower. So, this will result in increase in labor market tightness, which further helps in increasing the participation of the labor force, increasing the employment scenario. So, this is how we mention about. So, this is what it helps to understand. So, once we have the increase in total, so Q rises, unemployment falls, vacancy rises, and as a result the output rises. So, this is the last line is the macroeconomic figure that we try to understand here. Decrease in matching efficiency, if firms are not able to get the required amount of labor or required the worker with the required skill set, what is going to be the impact on this? The impact is going to be how the firms are posting vacancies. So, firm may be posting vacancies, there is no doubt, but the cost, if the matching is not taking place, so for the people, for the consumer, it will be very difficult to get hired by the firms, and that will further create scenario. So, in that situation it will be really difficult to get employment, because maybe the required skill sets are not with the consumer, and firms are asking for more skill set. So, that we have a structural disequilibrium that we say in the economy that may apply here. So, as a result the unemployment rises, but vacancy rate stays the same, because firms they do not mind, and Y falls. So, this is what the underlying idea. Let me summarize now. So, as a summary, I would say that we discussed about the Beveridge curve, we mentioned about the one-sided model, two-sided model, but the underlying idea is that with such a small or I would say a small foundations of micro, labor and consumer, we are able to drive the macro picture of unemployment, and we are seeing that how in the real life the labor search matters and how it impacts the participation of the labor in the market. So, I will stop here, and then we will have further discussion on the different schools of thought and the rational expectation we will be talking, and I will stop here. Thank you so much for your attention.